All right, let's talk about the FTCE ESE exam. I know, just hearing the name can bring on that feeling of dread, right? It feels like this massive hurdle. But what if I told you there's a way to crack it? A system to turn that anxiety into pure confidence. That's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to build a game plan. So, how do we actually do that? Well, it's not about memorizing every single factoid in the textbook. No way. It's about learning how to think. It's about knowing how to dissect a question, spot the key words, and see right through those tricky wrong answers they try to throw at you. Let's get into it. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll crack the code on those dense legal questions. Then, we're going to jump into the classroom with some real-world scenarios. After that, we'll make sure we've mastered the key terms. And to wrap it all up, we'll put together your personal game plan for exam day. Sound good? Okay, strategy number 1. Decode the law. You know, a pretty big chunk of this exam boils down to knowing the rules of the road. We're talking federal and state regulations, especially IDEA. If you can get a handle on these questions, you are already way ahead of the curve. Let's dive right into a practice question. Okay, so we've got Rob. He's a student with a disability, and he brings a knife to school. The IEP team moves him to an alternative placement for 45 days. The big question here is, could they legally do that? Were his rights violated? Let's apply our system here. First step, what are the key pieces of information? We've got student with a disability, weapon, and removal. Your brain should immediately go to IDEA and its rules on discipline. But, and this is so important, you have to ask, is there an exception to the rule? That word weapon should be a giant flashing red light. It tells you that the standard rules might not apply here. And this slide shows us a perfect example of a common trap on this exam. Option D, which talks about a manifestation determination hearing, is super tempting, right? I mean, that's usually a critical step in the discipline process under IDEA. But remember that flashing red light. A weapon is considered a special circumstance. It changes the game. It allows for an immediate removal, which is why B is the right answer. The exception overrules the standard procedure. So here's the key takeaway. I want you to burn into your memory. When it comes to discipline under IDEA, there are 3 game changers: weapons, drugs, and serious bodily injury. If you see any of those 3 things in a question, you know you're in special circumstances territory. It's a fantastic shortcut to remember. All right, we've handled the legal side of things. Now let's shift gears and step into the classroom. Our second strategy is all about analyzing those real-life scenarios they give you. This is where you really get to show that you can apply all that theory to actual students in actual situations. Okay, here we go. Kristen is a 3rd grader with an intellectual disability. Her teacher, Mrs. Smith, gives her a kindergarten-level worksheet instead of the grade-level activity everyone else is doing. The question is asking, what specific disadvantage of labeling is happening right here? Let's break this down. What's the action? The teacher swaps out the work. Simple enough. Why did she do it? Because of Kristen's label. And what's the consequence of that action? The teacher, based on an assumption tied to that label, gave Kristen a much less challenging task. This is a textbook, crystal clear example of a teacher lowering her expectations. And here's another one of those classic traps. Look at option D. The label is being used to limit her resources. Now, is that kind of true? Yeah, you could argue that. But is it the root of the problem? No. The real issue, the primary disadvantage being shown here, is that Mrs. Smith has lowered her expectations. The limited resource, the easier worksheet, is just a symptom of that core problem. You always want to look for the root cause. Okay, on to our third and final strategy, mastering the key concepts. Honestly, you should think of these as the gimme questions. They're basically vocabulary tests. If you know your definitions cold, these are free points. So let's make sure you get them. Here's a perfect one. A question about Least Restrictive Environment, or LRE. This is one of the absolute pillars of special education. If you've been studying, this should feel like a bit of a relief when you see it on the exam. So before we even look at the option, let's just define it for ourselves. What is LRE? At its heart, it's the idea that students with disabilities should be in the general education classroom learning with their non-disabled peers, as much as is appropriate for them. It's about inclusion and access. Now let's look at our options. Answer D just nails it, right? A setting as similar as possible to the regular classroom with supports. That's the whole idea. The trap is answer A. While a special ed classroom is a place where services happen, it is by its very nature a more restrictive setting. It's part of the LRE continuum, but it's not the definition of the principle itself. See the difference? We've gone through how to attack the different types of questions, but knowing the material is only half the battle. Now we need to talk about exam day itself. You need a solid game plan for managing the clock, handling your nerves, and just performing your best. So let's build that plan right now. First, just a little bit of math. You get 120 questions and 2.5 hours. That's 150 minutes. That works out to just about 1 minute and 15 seconds per question. The clock is ticking from the moment you start, so you've got to be efficient. So here it is, your 5-step game plan. Number 1, pace yourself. If a question has you stumped, just flag it and move on. Don't get bogged down. 2, read carefully and find those keywords, just like we practiced. 3, eliminate the answers you know are wrong. Get them out of the way. 4, trust your gut. Seriously, your first instinct is usually on the money. And 5, if you have time at the end, go back and check your flagged questions. That's your system. Okay, let's just wrap this up with one final thought. You have done the work. You've gone through the strategies. You've reviewed the material. You are not going into this unprepared. You are absolutely ready for this. I want you to walk into that testing center with a totally different mindset. This test, it's not a wall designed to keep you out. It's a doorway. It's the final step to get you into the classroom where you are truly meant to be. You're not just taking a test. You are stepping into your future. You have the knowledge, you have the strategies. All that's left is to go in there and prove what you know. You've got this.